Hello everyone watching. Decided to try my hand at making a guide video for the Mad King's Clocktower. Seems to be giving a lot of people a lot of trouble since there's only a couple days left on the event. Hopefully this might be able to help you push through and get past the difficulty. Something I'm going to try to do, it's a little different from what I've seen mostly on YouTube so far. People are just kind of recording themselves completing the puzzle. I'm going to try to put a few overlays and everything and kind of pause it on key points that I seem to notice a lot of people falling on. So hopefully the little visuals will help kind of make a little more sense out of what we're talking about. And I'm going to pause it and speed it up and slow it down as necessary too, so stay with me. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to add here is a vertical red line. This is just to help you visualize how I personally line up my jumps. It's always good to know that if your platform that you're jumping to is in the center of your screen, then you're at least lined up properly to land on it. Most of the time when you miss a jump, it's going to be because you either fall to the left or right. So using this as kind of a visual aid just to see how these jumps are lined up might make it easier for you to do for yourself. Alright, I assume that most people don't have any trouble getting up to the first major cog where everybody has to kind of stop and wait for the gears and everything to bust out of the side of the tower. This part tends to trip a lot of people up, so I'm going to try to slow it down and walk you through it step by step. As soon as the items, all the debris busts out of the side of the tower, you can more or less just, hold the W key or your forward key and jump straight across it. It really shouldn't trip you up too much. Where people tend to have a lot of trouble is with this tiny floating square here. It does some trippy things to the camera depending on how you approach it. Sometimes you can jump straight over it, but most oftentimes, at least when I run the puzzle, I tend to veer off just slightly to the right of it. Holding forward kind of lets you jump up onto the next platform here, and you have to turn your camera just enough to get onto the next piece. A lot of people get tripped up here because I think they try to rush, and maybe the glitches in the camera kind of screw them up. Another thing you have to make sure you do well is turn your camera to, again, you can line up with that vertical red line I'm using as a visual here to line up your next jump. If you don't do this and you miss the next piece, then you're going to have to wait for everyone to finish, and nobody likes to do that. Another mistake you want to try to avoid is jumping too early. I paused it here so you can get a good look at the little square you want to make sure your feet are planted on before you take your next jump, otherwise you're pretty likely to fall short. The jump immediately after is a simple repeat of the last one. This next part here, people tend to take a lot of different ways. I notice a lot of players falling here as well. This big piece here has like 4 levels of big stairs on it, if you will. You only really need to climb up to the second one. It's going to give you plenty of height to get up to the next part. Okay, so I probably made a bad habit of running up the plank here, even though it's a bit more difficult than than you need to be. It gets me up to the chest, and that gives me a little bit more height to get over the cogwheel. Once you again line up the jump just fine, it really shouldn't be much trouble after that. Alright, once you make it up to the top of the cogwheel, the next few jumps that are going to come up are actually pretty easy in comparison. It seems like the hard part is behind us at this point. Again, you want to make sure you're timing your jumps as such that you're jumping off the furthest tip of the platform that you can run on. That way you're not jumping too soon and possibly falling short. Okay, these next few jumps are probably going to be some of the most difficult you're going to have to face. This one's kind of a blind corner, so you really have to know where you're going before you get there. Otherwise, you're likely to miss it because you're not going to be given a lot of time to look at it and figure it out. When you make this next jump coming up, you're going to have to make a hard right on your camera to line up your center to the tiny square that's going to appear around the corner, and I'm going to show you that here soon. Once you make it onto this square, just make sure that you turn slightly back to the left so that you're aiming at the lowest part of this ramp here. If you try to aim any higher, you're likely to bump into the geometry and probably fall into the mist. Okay, this platform's a bit misleading with the camera, but the way it's angled, the side that is facing opposite you, you can actually stand on it a little bit more past the corner, so you can gain a few more feet before making the jump. I got a little profile of it here on the side, just so you can get a better look at it. When you're jumping onto this cogwheel, try to make sure that you're aiming for the left lower side of it. If you try to aim for the right side, it's a little bit further away, you're likely to miss. Again, immediately after landing, be prepared to make a pretty hard right with the camera so you can line up your next one. Okay, here's a spot where jumping off the tip of the platform might actually work against you. If you jump too late, you're likely to hit the bottom of the stairs at the top of your head and you'll miss the jump, and you'll be pissed. I find it easiest to take this one at a little bit of an angle, starting from the slight right, and then jumping a little bit to the left as you kind of aim for the lower part of the stairs. Okay, here's another one of those blind corners that are going to catch you off guard unless you're expecting it. This cogwheel gives a lot of people problems because it's angled weird and it's very easy to miss. Again, be ready to turn your camera about. This jump can be kind of fickle because if you go a little too far to the left, you're going to slide off, and a little too far to the right, and you're going to miss. You want to aim for about this part of the cogwheel here because it's actually the widest surface that you can see immediately from your jumping point. Sometimes you can run across, but you take your fate into your own hands at that point. Sometimes it's easier to hop depending on how you land. No matter how you get there, it's important that you have your feet on the ground by the time you get to the far side of the cogwheel, otherwise you're not going to be able to make this next jump to the stairs. Okay, these next two hops are pretty standard fare for jumping puzzles you're probably used to at this point. This is just where you have to jump onto a narrow plank from another narrow plank. Again, keeping everything lined up with the center part of your screen, the part that you're running toward. It gives you a wider margin of error if it's straight, as opposed if you're driving or jumping against it. Okay, the graphic here is a little bit misleading. Despite what it might look like, you actually cannot fall between these two pieces of geometry, so just kind of use that as a bit of a safety net. It's easier if you just kind of angle yourself and strafe jump. If you're using your default keys, you can actually use the E key next to your W to strafe while you're in the air. That does make it easier to get over to this platform as opposed to using your D key, which would probably turn you by default. Okay, next is the leap of faith. This is a bit tricky at first, but it's really easy once you know how to do it. Easiest thing you can do is run up the right plank of the two here, run straight off the end of it, and jump. Honestly, this entire puzzle gets a lot easier from here. Those pieces will fall down, as you see on the shot here. And while you're actually face planted on the ground, you do have a second to loot the chest. You can even loot it while you're still on the ground and you're not actually up and able to move. So it gives you a few more trick-or-treat bags. Just make certain that whatever hotkey you have set to loot, that you double tap it instead of just tapping it once, because that loots it immediately, and then you can cancel out of the animation by actually moving. That way you don't get stuck having to fill that stupid progress bar. This broken cogwheel here is not a contiguous platform, so you do have to jump from the bottom part of it to the top part. The rest of these jumps actually leading up to the final flight of stairs are pretty straightforward. There's no real trickery involved. You just got to make sure that you understand you can take a little bit more time with this. At this point, the mist underneath you isn't going to be rushing you nearly as bad as it was at the beginning. Again, a lot of this is just basic platform jumping. Just make sure that if you're jumping onto a thin surface, that you try to line it up so that it's straight to you as much as possible. Even going at a slight angle gives you a little bit of error in both directions, so it makes it easier to be accurate. Once you've made it to this point, it's almost hard to mess it up. The clock face will spin around a couple times. When it comes around a second time, you'll see a lightning bolt hit it and actually shatter the bottom part. That's your cue to jump. And once you make it in, even if you miss it horribly, it'll mostly give you credit for it. And that will complete the puzzle. So we took about a 90-second puzzle and stretched it out over almost 9 minutes. So hopefully the extra pausing details and all that will help you guys through it. If you have any questions about the video or whatnot, feel free to hit me up in game.